Hey guys, so today's video is going to be all about the pros and cons of working at EMG Education in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. I've been getting a bunch of comments on one of the videos I posted a couple months ago when I first started working there, just asking me about it, do I recommend it? So I figured I would just make a video and compile it all so you can make the decision for yourself. So I'll go ahead and I'll start with the pros. The biggest pro for EMG is the salary. Any other company that's kind of in the same realm of what they do, which is a company that goes into public schools or even language centers, are kind of clumped together, it definitely does have the highest salaries. For schools like APACS or ILA, I have friends there who make around, I think, 30 to 35 mil to start off with, and at EMG you start off with 45 to 50. A little sidebar from EMG, just because I mentioned APACS, I just want to say quickly that I know that's a company that a lot of people are interested in also because it's a really big company in Vietnam, but I absolutely don't recommend working for them. All of my friends who do work for them haven't gotten paid since April. They got 5% of April's paycheck and still haven't gotten paid. So the rest of the 95% of April, May, June, and July, which is the month that we're in now when I'm filming this, yet they're still expected to work every day and teach as normal. So I don't recommend working with them because you won't get paid. But anyways, let's go back to EMG. The next pro is the fact that EMG can bring you in during the pandemic, which a lot of companies cannot do. That's because they have some ties with the government and they are able to, I don't know, work their magic, get some paperwork done really quickly too, by the way, because I was interviewing with international schools because I am a certified teacher and I was trying to work with them, but none of them could get me in. And even the few that said that they could get me in, possibly, they were looking at 4, 5, 6 months in advance, and EMG got us in weeks. So that's definitely one pro if you're looking to, you know, get out of where you are right now and just move to Vietnam as soon as possible. They can do that. Another pro is the fact that you don't have to do any lesson planning or grading, which I know for people who, you know, you're not really wanting to be a teacher, you're just doing this to travel. It's a huge pro because it doesn't really require any prep time. Basically how it works is everything's in the folders on the computer, so you'll just upload it onto the USB drive that you have, bring it to the classroom. There's PowerPoints, worksheets, everything there for you. So there's not really any prep work, which is nice, and you don't have to grade anything. So once per semester there will be like a testing week, and you'll have to grade papers during that time, but it's only 1 week. So other than that, you're not grading anything, which is really nice because then you only have to, you know, do work during the times that you're actually teaching. You don't have to bring it home with you or think about it before. And the last pro I'm going to talk about for working for EMG is the free lunches that they provide every day. They're not necessarily the best lunches. A couple of them are pretty tasty. They're pretty basic, but it is nice to have, you know, some free lunch for you if you want it. A lot of people opt not to do it, but I did it every single day, and then if I just happened to not like it that day, then I would just order other food. But it is nice to have that option of not having to pay for lunch. So now I'm going to move on to the cons. The first con I'm going to talk about is the fact that you have to pay for your own flights and quarantine when you arrive. So like I mentioned in the pros, they are one of the only companies that are able to get you in, which is awesome, but they don't pay for anything, so it's super expensive to get here. I came in January 2021, and it was the only flight that was going in was Emirates flight. So I had to fly from Los Angeles to Dubai to Ho Chi Minh, and the one-way flight was $1,200, and then the quarantine, which I'm actually lucky because I was able to quarantine with my boyfriend, which made the price a little bit lower, but it was still $1,500 between the two of us. So if you quarantine on your own, I think it's around $1,200 or $1,300. So quarantining with a partner definitely saves you some money, but right off the bat, you know, that's like $2,000 US that I just had to fork up, and it was really expensive. So not everyone is able to do that just to be able to get into the country. So if you do decide to sign with EMG, just remember that you're going to have a sufficient amount of funds before you go there, because not only do you have to pay for that, around $2,000, then you need to support yourself until you get that first paycheck. So I arrived in January and didn't get my first paycheck until March 10th, which was only half a paycheck because I only started in mid-February. So it was kind of rough in the beginning, paying for all of that, paying for food, getting an apartment, paying the deposit, just paying to live. So it's quite expensive in the beginning just because they don't pay for anything. So that's one thing to consider. The next con I'm going to talk about is the office hours. So technically the office hours are from 8 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. You do have an hour and a half break for lunch. But I list this as a con because it is a really long working day. Some of the other schools I interviewed with either ended at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, or they said once your classes are done for the afternoon, you can go home. I do know of some other schools and companies that you don't have to sit in the office. You just, as long as you show up for your classes, then you still get your salary, it's fine. But that's one thing I always really hated about working at EMG. You just have to sit for no reason. Like I said, there's no lesson planning, no grading, so you're literally just sitting at your desk just because they want you to sit at your desk. So even if your classes end, let's say at 3 o'clock, you're just supposed to sit at your desk until 5:30. And that kind of leads me into my next con, which is unfair schedules. I know that this isn't necessarily an EMG problem, like I know other schools have this, but I did find that it was kind of unfair with the schedules. I know that they probably try their hardest to make everyone's schedule even, but it's really not. For example, I worked in 4th grade primary, so that means that a standard class is 80 minutes long. So if you have just a single class, it would be 80 minutes. If you have a double class, it would be 80 minutes, 80 minutes. Most people that I talked to either had no double classes or maybe 1 or 2 double classes per week. I had 6, so that means during 6 times 6, like I had 3 mornings and 3 afternoons during the week that I taught 80/80, which was a lot. It's so exhausting, and even on Friday afternoons, I finished teaching at 5:20. So that means by the time I got in the bus, got all the way back, had to, go back to the office, it's way past the time of office hours, and I don't know, I just felt like it really wasn't fair because most of the people that I talked to didn't have as hard of a schedule as I did, or as many classes as I did. Also, sometimes classes start before 8 o'clock, so for me personally, 3 days a week I left the office at 7, which means I had to get there at like 6:45, and I'm not compensated for that. That's technically, I guess, just added hours, but I don't get paid for that. So that was one thing that kind of bothered me too, is that these were the set office hours, so why are we having classes before then? So that's just one thing to keep in mind. There's nothing you can really do about it, but it's just one thing to note that, you might get an unfair schedule or a harder schedule than other people, but yet you guys are going to be making the same amount of money. So, and the last con I'm going to talk about, which in my opinion, this is the most important part of the video that you should pay attention to, is EMG's tendencies to blacklist people. So what blacklisting means is basically if you do anything that EMG doesn't like, they put you on this blacklist with the government. Basically, it's your name and your passport number, and you have 2 options. Either you get deported and kicked out of Vietnam, or you have to pay thousands of dollars in fines in order to stay in Vietnam. The most common reason why they blacklist people is if you finish your contract, so you did everything you were supposed to do, you finished out your contract, but next year you decide you want to work at a different company, a different school. If you choose to not re-sign with them and you're still going to stay in Vietnam, they automatically blacklist you. So basically, anybody who was working for them and has not left Vietnam, they just submit all those names to the government, and you'll have to pay thousands of dollars to stay in Vietnam and work for that new company, which most people can't afford, so they end up having to leave Vietnam entirely. I had heard stories of this before, and I wasn't really sure how true it was, but after this past contract, which the contracts end on May 31st, so around May is when they start asking you if you're going to re-sign and doing the whole signing process, that's when I started hearing just all of this crazy stuff from people I actually know. Someone that my boyfriend was working with in secondary school in EMG, he finished out his contract and decided he wanted to work at an international school because he's a licensed teacher and you'll make a lot more money doing that. So he finished out his contract, did everything the correct way, didn't do anything to screw over EMG in any way, but apparently a couple weeks after he chose not to re-sign, he got a knock on his door from the authorities, and EMG told them that he did some crimes or was wanted or something illegal in Cambodia, so they just took him from his apartment and deported him. So for again, no reason, just because he chose to not re-sign with EMG. And another story that I think is even crazier is a friend of both my boyfriend and I. He wasn't sure if he wanted to re-sign with EMG because, again, he's a licensed teacher. So he had been having interviews with international schools, and you make so much more money, so he wanted to go that route, but he was just so conflicted, so unsure. So we were given a deadline on when we had to sign the contract if you decided you were going to resign, and I think it was a Wednesday. So he went into HR, asked him for a couple more days, said he still wasn't sure, and then by that Friday, so 2 days later, he decided, okay, you know what, I'm just going to resign with EMG. It's just easier. He hasn't heard back from the international schools yet, so I'm going to do it. And that was in May. In June, he only got paid half of his paycheck. So when he went into HR to ask him, you know, why did I only get half of my paycheck? I worked the whole month. They told him because he took too long to decide if he wanted to re-sign or not, on that Wednesday, anyone who didn't sign with EMG again, they submitted that list of all the names to be blacklisted. So even though he ended up deciding to stay with EMG, basically as a precaution, they just submitted them to be on the blacklist anyways. So they took half of his paycheck without asking him to pay to get him off the blacklist. So to me, that just blows my mind because he is currently an EMG employee. Like, he decided to stay with them and they still screwed him over just as a precaution, just maybe he might leave us, so just in case we're gonna put him on the blacklist, which again, it just blows my mind. Like, I can go on and on with stories I've heard of this happening to different people. Honestly, the whole time that I was working at EMG, I didn't love it, I didn't hate it, I kind of felt indifferent towards it. So when people were asking me about it while I had been working there, you know, maybe March or April, I was kind of like, yeah, you know, they pay pretty well, sure, do it. But kind of going through that whole process of the re-signing and the blacklisting and just people I knew being affected by that, that's kind of just when I lost respect for them, and I just thought, as a company, that's not really cool to be doing that. It's really shady, really sketchy. So if you were to ask me if I would ever work for them again, my answer would be definitely not. But again, everybody has different experiences, so maybe you might have a really great experience or you know someone who worked for them and had a great experience. I would say the only way that it would be worth it to work for EMG is if you're just gonna work in Vietnam for 1 year. You know, 1 year, okay, I'm working for them and then I'm leaving. I'm not gonna try to stay in Vietnam, I'm not gonna do anything else. I'm here for the 1 year and then I'm gonna leave, because then there's no way that they can do anything to you. You probably still will be blacklisted, but you won't be in Vietnam anyways, so it could be okay. So I hope that you found this pros and cons list helpful for you when you're trying to make your decision. I don't want to be one of those people, because I hate those people that try to push their opinions and their beliefs on you just because of my experience and my friends' experiences. So take this pros and cons list, think about it, decide what's best for you, because what's best for you might not be the same experience that I had, so you never know. If you have any other questions about working for EMG or just living in Vietnam in general, please comment below. I'd love to answer your questions, or you can shoot me a message on Instagram, either one. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.